Trauma-informed interviewing is one of the most important developments in modern workplace investigations, particularly when dealing with sensitive matters such as harassment, violence, discrimination, or other experiences that may have caused significant emotional distress. At its core, trauma-informed interviewing follows a simple but important principle. Do no harm. The purpose is not only to collect information, but also to create an environment where the individual feels safe enough to provide the most accurate and complete account possible. A traditional interview approach may assume that a witness will naturally remember events in a clear, logical, and chronological sequence. However, when a person has experienced trauma, the way memories are formed and recalled can be significantly different. This is why investigators must understand the science behind trauma and memory rather than judging credibility based only on how a person tells their story. Traumatic experiences can affect the brain's normal information processing systems, particularly areas involved in emotional responses and memory formation, such as the amygdala and hippocampus. During a highly stressful event, the body releases stress hormones that can interfere with normal cognitive functioning. One possible response to extreme stress is the freeze response, sometimes referred to as tonic immobility. In this state, a person may temporarily experience an inability to react or respond normally. Understanding this response is particularly important in cases involving sexual harassment or violence, because an individual's reaction during a traumatic event may not match common expectations about how someone should respond. Trauma can also influence how memories are stored. Instead of forming a complete chronological record, traumatic memories may be stored in fragments. A person may remember specific sounds, smells, physical sensations, or emotions very clearly, while struggling to explain the exact sequence of events. For investigators, this creates an important lesson. Difficulty recalling events in order does not automatically mean that the person is being dishonest. Sometimes the challenge is not the absence of memory, but the difficulty of retrieving and organizing those memories under stressful circumstances. This leads to another important concept. Investigators must be cautious when assessing credibility based on behavior or emotional reactions. People respond to trauma in different ways. Some individuals may appear highly emotional, while others may appear calm, detached, numb, or even display behaviors that seem unusual, such as smiling or laughing during difficult discussions. These reactions may represent coping mechanisms rather than signs of deception. A common investigative mistake is falling into the credibility trap, assuming that a person is unreliable because their story is not perfectly chronological or because their emotional response does not match expectations. Modern investigative practice recognizes that inconsistencies, emotional reactions, or unusual behaviors should not be viewed in isolation. Credibility must be assessed by examining the entire body of evidence. A trauma-informed approach requires investigators to adjust their interviewing techniques. Rather than immediately asking questions that require a strict timeline, such as, "What happened first?" or "What happened next?" investigators may use sensory-based questions to help the individual access their memories. Questions such as, "What do you remember hearing?" or "What do you remember about the environment at that moment?" may help the person provide more detailed information. Investigators should also use non-presumptive prompts such as, "Tell me more about that," or "Describe what else you remember." These approaches allow the witness to guide the narrative instead of forcing their experience into the investigator's expected structure. Another important skill is the use of silence. Silence is not a failure in an interview. Sometimes allowing a few moments of quiet gives the individual time to process emotions, organize memories, and provide additional information. Safety and emotional well-being are also central to trauma-informed interviewing. Before beginning the substantive interview, investigators should consider whether the individual feels safe and whether appropriate interim measures have been implemented. In many cases, the person's first concern is not only telling their story, but understanding what the organization has done to prevent further harm. Support persons, such as a trusted individual or union representative, may also help provide emotional support, although their role must remain clearly defined. They may provide reassurance, but they should not answer questions or influence the individual's account. Investigators should also have an exit plan. If a person becomes overwhelmed, experiences significant distress, or appears unable to continue, the investigator should be prepared to pause the interview, take a break, change the direction of questioning, or reschedule the discussion. However, while trauma-informed interviewing is supportive, the investigator must always maintain professional neutrality. Being trauma-informed does not mean automatically accepting every allegation as proven. The investigator's role is not to act as a therapist, advocate, or counselor. The investigator remains a neutral fact-finder whose responsibility is to gather evidence, assess credibility, and reach conclusions based on the available facts. The difference is that a trauma-informed investigator understands that people do not always communicate in predictable ways, especially after experiencing significant stress. Ultimately, trauma-informed interviewing is not about lowering investigative standards. It is about improving the quality of evidence by creating conditions where individuals can provide their best possible account. When applied correctly, it supports both compassion and fairness, helping investigators reach findings that are more reliable, balanced, and defensible.